When you first go in, the Visual Studio landscape looks a little bare. We need to add some things to this. One of those is the toolbox. Go up to View, look for Toolbox, and it will come up here. Mine is already pinned, but if yours, when you first click it, the toolbox might be over on the left hand side, or if you bring it out, it actually is overlapping the form. It's kind of a pain in the neck that way, so find the little thumbtack thing up in the middle of these symbols, click it, and it will push the form over to the right. Then another thing that we need to do during the course, we will be using some of these tools. I'm going to bring over one of these tools just as an example. One of them is a label. I'm going to do something with it in a minute, but right now the label is highlighted, and we need to be able to see the properties of that particular label. And the properties box is normally down in the lower right hand corner. So when we do that, we can just right click on this property for labels, click properties, and now you can see the properties box, and it has quite a few things in it. Now this particular label I'm going to call LBL, and then I'm going to call it first. And I'm going to use it to label a first name entry point in a minute with another tool. So if I scroll down here, text, my keyboard is being a little temperamental because I've made some changes to the settings. Okay, now then, sorry about the things here. Now the text I want to put into this is enter first name. Now with labels, you rarely have to change them. What I mean that is, in the program, you'll never find a point where you probably have to change them. I'm setting my label settings here, and I don't really need to go about making a change to that, and they'll be up here. You'll see it. It says enter first name, and it's done. Another thing that we probably will use, and I say probably, you'll use this quite a bit. When you're entering one piece of information or possibly outputting a piece of information, but we're talking about one at a given time, I'm going to put it roughly here. This is a text box. And I forgot to mention, mine is automatically coming up with this in alphabetical order. And that's because I've turned this A to Z thing over here in the properties on. Once you've turned on one property at the beginning, they'll all remain that way, almost certainly. But I definitely recommend turning them on for alphabetical order because it makes it much easier to find later on. Okay, so I'm going to call this one text first. And you can see this helps identify I'm going to go ahead and call it first name. This helps identify that similarity between that and the label. And I'm going to go over to the label, and I'm going to change the name of that to first name. But clearly, label first name is not the same as text first name. Okay, so again, this has a text box and you can output to it, but we don't really want to do that here. We want to use it for input. So let's put another label onto the form. And we'll call this LBL last name. And I'll go down here and say enter last name. Now you notice whatever I put in the text portion, I can put spaces in and things like that, but I can't do that when I'm defining the name of the tool. And each tool must be named uniquely. Okay, so I click outside, there it is. And when I say click outside, I click in the black area here. Yours may be white until you change to a dark mode. It's okay, you can do that. But, you know, just keep that in mind. Now, let's put another text box on here. Oftentimes I drag it on and then I reposition it. When it comes to form layout, it's a good idea to do something like that. Okay, so see, it looks better that way. Now I go back here to this, and let's see if I named it. No, I haven't. Okay, so I'm going to change this one to txt last name. And again, I'm going to leave the text portion of it blank. Now, we want to do something with this. If we fill these out, we fill in the blanks here. We're going to want to do some action. Okay, so this is input. When you're working with a program, the first thing you want to identify is, what is my input? How am I getting information that we need for the program? And oftentimes we need to input something from the user. The next thing that we'll have to do is to process. And one of the things that we do when we're processing is we're using something like a button. Button basically says, go do something. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to do something simple here. Now, in this case, I'm going to put btn, and I'm going to say print, oops, can't put a space there, print names. Now, I can change the text on this, and you really should here. You should tell the user, what is it we're going to do? Let's say print the names. Okay. Now, this fits, but if any reason it didn't fit, you can stretch this out. You see here there's an arrow. You can click and hold and drag that out. Okay, you can do this. Don't do it excessively. Just do it so that you get the alignment. I like this alignment with the text boxes. Okay, so this will trigger a place to do the work. Now, when you want that area to do the work, you're talking about the programming. Double click it. There it is. And you'll notice that the name comes with it. Button print names. Now, if you forget and you just end up with the name of the button that it came with by default, it's not a disaster. It is possible to rename it, but I'm not sure it's really well worth discussing it at the moment. Okay, so when you actually will be clicking the program, clicking the button rather, when you're running it, it comes here and it executes the things that that it wants to do during that point. Now, before you get to actually typing in code there, you need to finish your interaction page, if you will, your forum. And in this particular case, I have input, I have something that says go, but I need output. Input, process, output. Remember that. Set it to memory. It'll be on a test. You'll see it. Okay, so input, process, output. We need output because most of the time the user is going to want output. Now, I have two things that I collected here. Could I output them to two individual things? Yeah, I could. But in this particular case, I am going to choose to use one thing and give you an idea that when we're going to be outputting more than one thing, form load, and again, it's possible that you might accidentally end up with some empty item in here. I have Tremor, so sometimes, you'll see things like this. Go back to the right spot, Jeff. Okay, so here, again, you can size it to whatever you want, need. List box, come over here to the name. LSB, and I'm just going to call this, output. I mean, you can call it something else depending upon what it is. Is it output for a type of loop that you're doing? Is it an output for your anything? In week 3, we'll talk about stacks and queues and things like that. So you might have LSB stack, LSB queue, whatever. Okay, we'll talk about it at that particular time. So, as you can see here, I've clicked in the black area here, and you'll see that it says LSB output. So now, if we go back to the code portion, here's the button. Okay. Something to remember about computer programming is that things, when you're moving things, you generally are moving them from right to left. The reason for that is it is a theoretical mathematical process. And so if we want to do that, we typically are moving things from right to left. However, in the case of a list box, LSB output. Now, if you type a few keys, you'll see it pop up here like this. You can hit tab. It'll fill out the rest of it, kind of like autocomplete. I'm sure everybody knows what autocomplete is. Dot. And then we want to do items dot add, and then we put in for parentheses here, and then the thing that we want to add is one of the text boxes. So this is the first name, and where it's located is in the text property. Okay, so if we go to the end, we put in a semicolon, and what it does is it adds it to LSB output. Now, LSB output has a list, hence the term list box, of items, and it adds it to the end of the list. Okay, so we do it again. LSB. Now this thing is really kind of smart. You'll notice it says LSB output dot items dot add, and then it's figured out, gee, you know, one of the ones was the first name, but the next one is the last name. Hit tab. It goes over, fills in LSB output. Tab. Says, gee, you wanted all of that, huh? Okay, I'll fill it all in there for you. Now, in theory, if it wasn't what you were looking for, you might go all the way to the end and then just change some minor things. But you'll notice it filled it in. Now let's see what we got when we run this so far. You'll go up here, it says start. Once in a while, for some reason, it just puts in the name of your program. Down here at the bottom, it was compiling and then it's finished. Okay, so here's the program running. Enter first name. Okay. Next thing, enter last name. Oops, I misspelled my name. It's been my whole life correcting people on how to spell my last name. Now I can't spell it right. Now then, print the names. Click it. And now they are in LSB output. And the interesting thing here is that if I were to go back up here to input, come on. Okay. And I were to enter John Williams, say for instance. Click print names. All right, I clicked it twice. You can keep doing this and this will keep going. If I were to enter print names. Okay, so it adds it to the And again, I clicked it twice when I finally did get it clicked. I'm having a little troubles with my tremors. But you can see it puts a scroll bar in and just keeps adding it to the end of the list. Okay, so input process, the button, it triggers the processing, and output. It's very important to understand that in a program that pretty much everything follows that process or that pattern of input, process, output.